accomplished native artist and one of Canada's major industrial corporations. An unlikely match for a shared vision and a successful partnership. But this is the North, where anything is possible. This is the Athabasca River Valley. Up here, there's always been a feeling of abundance, of promise in this land. Thousands of years ago, after the last glaciers, the first hunters who came and made camp in this region drew off the large herds of wood bison who grazed here. Those were the forebearers of the Cree people who still live here today. Written history tells us that more than 200 years ago, they were visited by British explorers who were drawn up the river by tales of abundant game and rich furs. Peter Pond and Alexander Mackenzie were among the first white men to see this land. They recorded seeing bituminous fountains into which a pole of 20 feet may be inserted without the least resistance, and that this resinous substance serves to gum the Indians' canoes. These were the first written reports of Alberta's greatest resource, which has come to be known as the oil sands. Since the turn of the century, there have been many attempts to develop this incredible resource. After years of research, development, and construction, the first barrel of synthetic crude oil flowed south in a pipeline in 1967. The oil sands were finally in production. This development triggered the growth of the community of Fort McMurray. In the last 30 years, the population has grown from 2,500 to 35,000. With an average age of 27 years, it's the youngest and one of the most prosperous cities in Canada. Brian Clark was born here in 1951.
It's a great lifestyle growing up here. I think most of our activities when we were kids were self-created. All of us spent so much time along this river. That's the good times. Fishing, hunting, skating, swimming. So we never had that added pressure that kids have today. These kids now are worried when they're 7 or 8 years old about what their future's going to be. If the oil industry hadn't hit this town, I could have been a trapper.
Instead, Brian took up a trade. He worked in the Western Canadian oil patch for 16 years as an industrial electrician.
And the arts is a total turnaround from that. You're still a builder, but at this time I get to build what I want to build, not what I'm told to build. So I have a whole new sense of freedom.
Sketching and drawing became Brian's hobbies during long months of working on the road. And then one day, a friend presented him with a gift of stone sculpting tools.
And all I did was art, just carve steady every day. So I developed some skills doing that and started developing inventory. And I piled stuff into a truck, went around and got kicked out of, I think, 42 galleries. Door slammed in my face to every one, and I never quit.
Brian's perseverance finally paid off. He received an impromptu invitation to join two friends at their show at a major gallery.
So that was my first show at the Bear Club in Edmonton, in '83. And I had a sellout, sold everything. I knew I was doing something right. I hear a comment sometimes when people say you're lucky. I find the harder I work, the luckier I get. There's something that drives you too, is I've never thought that I've done a piece that I can just say, okay, this is the ultimate best I can absolutely do. If that day happens, I'll quit. So every time you do a new piece, no matter what you do, you always seem to make a mistake. So before you finish that piece, you're thinking, well, the next one is going to be better.
Brian Clark's next one would challenge him in ways he never could have imagined. He was going back home to begin the largest commissioned work of his career. And how would this independent artist fare with one of Canada's major corporations as his collaborator?
The Syncrude project for me started almost 2 years ago, I had an idea that they needed some kind of a sign, and I knew that they had bison. So I came up with a little sketch.
Brian's sketch made its way to the desk of Syncrude's chief operating officer, Jim Carter.
So we realized that there was a real opportunity here for us to demonstrate that we're more than just a company that's out there digging holes in the ground, that we can in fact turn that land into a productive fashion at the end of the day. And we're willing to spend money to demonstrate to people the significance of what we're doing.
This land was once one of the world's largest open pit mines, but a commitment to restoration has produced new forests, wetlands, and grasslands. The corporation felt a need to mark the entrance to this restored landscape, and they turned to the creativity and vision of Brian Clark. The creative process is full of mystery. Sometimes you can sit for days and stare at an empty page, a blank canvas, or a block of stone. And then it comes, that spark. And you react to that creative energy, and if you've developed your craft, or if you've simply been blessed with the talent, it comes. Once the spark is struck, if the kindling is there, the fire rages.
Was the depiction of it's going to be quite a feat.
It becomes a very, very strong piece of sculpture.
Yeah.
Piece of art.
Piece of art. A piece of environmental art.
It's not a set approach. It's evolving.
Because it's not signage, and you want to treat it like an art piece.
There's a certain presence to it just because of its
I like the idea of these big massive stones, each representing an individual creature, a bison.
It's a timepiece, and you want it to go on. And we have
I feel a sense of frustration because I thought, well, everybody should just know that I can go do it. So it's been a learning process for me to realize that these people have to see something visual. They have to be able to look at something and say, okay, this is what it's going to look like in the end. Second stone.
The gateway, flanking Highway 63, north of Fort McMurray, would be marked by sculptures of wood bison standing 2 stories tall. This scale would require the skills of many disciplines and a clear understanding of the artist's vision.
When I first met Brian, I was actually a little nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I thought it would be difficult for a guy like myself, who's an engineer, to be able to work with this guy and build something that's a reality. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to interpret his vision.
Artists are not only visual artists, sculptors, they're landscapers, engineers, whoever has some kind of vision that's going to manipulate anything we use to suit their surroundings.
Brian lives and works in Mill Bay on the British Columbia coast.
In most cases, artists work solitary. You become sort of set in your ways, which for me I find good because it really grounds you and you get a lot of time to think. It develops your character in the sense that you have nobody to blame but yourself. I've actually been doing a lot of physical work getting ready for this project because it's going to be hard physically, and there's just no way you could walk into this kind of project out of shape. I'm going to have 2 native helpers. Hopefully they're creative enough to understand what's happening. So they'll definitely learn something about sculpting in that size, as well as just getting along in a work area. Hopefully not bashing each other over the head with a chisel or a hammer or something halfway through the project.
If you're a sculptor and you want to work large, really large, where do you find your raw materials? A quarry? Or maybe a site where they move enough earth in one day to fill Toronto's sky dome?
The stone that the bison is going to be made out of is right from the Syncrude site. It's anywhere from 2 feet to 3 feet thick.
Cretaceous siltstone, over 130 million years old. Rock from the age of dinosaurs, when this whole area was the bottom of a vast inland sea.
I'm looking for stones, the bigger the better. The material is definitely here. It's a matter of getting down and digging it out. And you gotta pound that stone and beat it down and then smooth it down. It's gonna be just a big physical undertaking. This is the way the job will be done. Now, I've had to do a lot of research into the bison. You think they're here of bison, you think of this big bulky animal standing around the field. I didn't realize they can run 35 miles an hour. So it's quite an incredible animal. I can understand now why the indigenous people that were here in the plains or who hunted them respected them, because I mean, one buffalo was probably a month's full of, food.
There are very few people who can recognize the difference between plains bison and the wood bison from northern boreal forests. But they are a different species. They're larger. They're much larger, and as a matter of fact, they're the largest land mammal in North America, and they're more spirited than their southern cousins. They used to range as far north as Great Slave Lake in the Northwest Territories in herds of tens of thousands. And then there was overkill, overhunting. And by 1891, there were less than 300 wood bison on the face of the planet. Since then, small herds have been nurtured back to health. And this herd has a unique story of its own. In 1993, Syncrude, in partnership with their neighbors, the Fort Mackay Band, released 30 wood bison onto 25 hectares of restored land within the Syncrude site. The species had been absent from this region for more than 200 years. Through successful breeding, the herd has now grown in numbers approaching 100 bison. It was this accomplishment that provided the inspiration for the gateway and the surrounding interpretive area. With the arrival of the stones, Brian's first step before any art is created is to teach his new crew the skills that they need to shape these massive rocks into the forms of bison.
I always find the best available high-tech tools that are on the market. I don't believe in standing around with a hammer and a chisel like a caveman. I know I could take probably most anybody off the street in about 2 or 3 days. I could teach them how to take a raw piece of stone and carve something. They feel a part of the whole process. Like, it's just not me saying, well, this is going to be a bison. And I think they feel proud of the fact that they're creating this as well.
Brian's a go-lucky guy, I guess. He's all right to work with. He's good. He's got a good sense of humor. Everybody out here's got a good sense of humor for this kind of work, because it's pretty hard work, actually. It's not as easy as it looks.
Brian's return to Fort McMurray gave him the opportunity to reconnect with some old friends. He and Silver Kirshnerik, now a senior mine advisor for Syncrude, had grown up together in a very different Fort McMurray.
Silver and I go back a long ways. We played hockey together when I was 16, 17 years old. It was neat running into him again, because for some reason he has that old town spirit too, and he just said, whatever you need, whatever I can do to help, just call.
As Brian and his crew continued, they found that working on the rock laying flat was throwing their perspective off. They needed the rocks to be placed on edge.
So talking to Silver and making him understand our concerns, it was no problem. It was just a matter of a phone call. Hour and a half later, we had a D11 cat there. We moved 6 stones, set them up in one day. It was just incredible to me.
It was just a matter of resourcing the right people and the equipment for Brian to make it successful.
Experience for me to just take a whole bunch of fresh guys in a matter of a couple of months, teach them how to use these tools.
And we were watching guys shave an 1/8 of an inch of stone after a while.
Well, one of the guys that seems to put himself out a little more than everybody else is Gerald Gladrew, we call Hoo Hoo.
My grandmother originally gave me that name. When I was born, my eyes were big like an owl.
He's been working on a little buffalo herd of his own out of some soapstone that I brought in from Edmonton for him. Showed him how to use the tools, and he seems to have an ability to create in his own mind whatever he wants to do. So that's been kind of a treat for me to see that happen.
He introduced me out there as his apprentice, and a lot of people seen my work, so they're pretty impressed. Makes me feel good too when they say that.
I really had the talent, it was just had to find something to bring it out.
The community of Fort McKay is located 60 kilometers north of Fort McMurray on the Athabasca River, virtually next door to the Syncrude site. Leader of the Fort McKay First Nation, Chief Mel Grandjam.
By having Brian back into this area, I hope that it will make some form of impact on our young ones, because the young ones are our future, and without our young ones there is no future.
It's landmark, that's what it is. It makes a significant landmark for our area. I'm sure glad it's one of ours doing it. It's not somebody else from somewhere else.
It was neat working with these guys because, like I said before, I feel part of the community. You know, I've got family here, my blood's here.
That's right. Blood's thicker than water.
Yeah.
The word partnership is a very strong word. A partnership between Syncrude and Fort McKay means a number of things. We've worked together on the Bison project. We've worked together on the Bison Gateway. We worked together on the Bison Trails. To me, that's one form of partnership that we both can promote and that the community accepts.
The Gateway's opening, scheduled for the first week of September, was approaching quickly. Brian tripled the size of his crew and began working double shifts.
But I don't know if they really will ever understand that. But it was more to satisfy me of how much would be done. I looked at the whole project in terms of percentages.
As the pace of the work increased, Brian felt the pressure of keeping ahead of his crew with his design.
Some days I could walk up to it and say, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. Another time, it's 2 or 3 days later, and I'm starting to wonder, and then the guys are bugging me, let's get on with it. It forces me into it. So I'm glad I've got the experience where I can get up and just draw it out and walk away from it. So, okay, get at her. But then I'll always say, you know, with that curve there, don't cut all that out. You know, give me 2 inches to play with there. So they do. They know now how we all work together. So it's kind of a neat thing.
The massive sculptures will mark the entrance to the Wood Bison Trail. This restored landscape will encompass a viewpoint overlooking the Wood Bison herd and an interpretive nature walk, the Machitawan Discovery Trail. In Cree, this means beginning place.
When I think of a newspaper, I hear about massive destruction of habitats and wildlife, forestry that's going on around us. This is a reverse process.
As the site preparations neared completion, the challenge of safely transporting 7 sculptures, each weighing up to 30 tons, loomed large.
There's one thing I noticed this summer is they can literally move a half a mountain in a day with the equipment they have around there. It doesn't take them very long. Overall, it was a confidence builder, I think, for all of us. Put something up there that's going to be there for a few hundred years.
With the sculptures in place and the final touch-ups being completed, energies turn to the setup for the opening day celebrations. Today marks a celebration, the unveiling of the Wood Bison Gateway.
If 20 years ago you told me you were here today celebrating the genesis of a buffalo herd, I would have told you you're dreaming. If 30 years ago you had suggested to one of my elders that in 1995 Syncrude would employ 332 native people, 23 of these people are from my community, they would have told you it was a dream as well. But our attentions here today proves dreams do come true, and that everything is possible. I come here with my elders and members of my First Nation to congratulate Brian Clark for the magnificent work he and his crew have done in creating a symbol that is very near and dear to our hearts.
We believe that by working together, industry and the Aboriginal people of the region can develop land use plans that are compatible with the long-term goals of all the residents in this area. So as you can see, the Wood Bison Trail is a powerful symbol of our environmental commitment and promise to the first people of this region, who after all are the ones that will continue to live on this land long after we're gone.
And now it's my privilege to ask Mr. Newell and Chief Grunjum to join me in unveiling this magnificent gateway to the new Bison Trail.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Brian Clark. Beautiful piece of work. Something to be very, very proud of.
Do you like it? I'm really proud to become a part of this. I mean, it was easy for me. Working with this crew. And thank you for treating me the way you did this summer. I feel like I'm back at home again.
A native artist with talent, passion, a major corporation and the resources it brings to a project, and the Fort Mackay Band. In these times, an unlikely partnership. But this trio has put trust and faith in one another. And the results are remarkable. They can all live with the great satisfaction of knowing that this land, which was once a mine site, is now the gateway that marks the return of the wood bison to this territory. It's an extraordinary story of shared gifts and shared wisdoms that I hope repeats itself. And in the words of the orator Chief Seattle, man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it.